Once a company starts to see royalty collections from every seed, it pushes its genetically engineered crops to replace the native crops that farmers and peasants have grown over millennia.
We don't know what is in the ecosystem. We don't know what we have in it.
So it's nothing to do with feeding the world, it's nothing to do with tackling some of these huge issues we're facing today. It's about control of the food sector, of the food economy.
The Jacobardi case was one of the great judicial moments in world history, and the public was totally unaware it was actually happening as the process was being engaged. General Electric and Professor Jacobardi went to the patent office with a little microbe that eats up oil spills. They said they had modified this microbe in the laboratory and therefore it was an invention. The patent office, the U.S. government, took a look at this, quote, invention, and they said, no way. The patent statutes don't cover living things. This is not an invention. Turn down. Then General Electric and Dr. Jacobardi appealed to the U.S. Customs Court of Appeal. And to everyone's surprise, by a 3-2 decision, they overrode the patent office. And they said, this microbe looks more like a detergent or a reagent than a horse or a honeybee. I laughed because they didn't understand basic biology. It looked like a chemical to them. Had it had an antenna or eyes or wings or legs, it would never have crossed their table and been patented. Then the patent office appealed. And what the public should realize now is the patent office was very clear that you can't patent life. My organization provided the main amicus curiae brief. If you allow the patent on this microbe, we argued, it means that without any congressional guidance or public discussion, corporations will own the blueprints of life. When they made the decision, we lost by 5-4, and Chief Justice Warren Burger said, sure, some of these are big issues, but we think this is a small decision. 7 years later, the U.S. Patent Office issued a one-sentence decree. You can patent anything in the world that's alive except a full-birth human being.
The Supreme Court of the United States ruled today that living organisms produced in the laboratory may be patented. This decision to extend patent
the U.S. Supreme Court had to decide was whether one man or one company should be able to control new forms of life.
We allow a company or a college to exclusively own a species. What does that say about our reverence for life?
Researchers at Harvard manipulated the genes of mice, making their offspring more susceptible to cancer. They patented the Harvard mouse in the U.S., Europe, and Japan, then tried to do the
legal
same
battle
here.
that finally came to an end today. The Supreme Court of Canada ruled the genetically engineered mouse can't be patented.
Canadians don't think that life forms are inventions of industry like bulbs and wood chips.
Scientists and drug companies search the planet for genes. Companies scouring the planet looking for valuable DNA. Genes they can patent in DNA.
Feels a lot like the Wild West. We've got bandits going around the world, collecting wherever they can, sometimes under false pretenses.
Because it's been so isolated, Newfoundland has a unique gene pool, and there's been so much interest from gene prospectors.
My genetic blueprint really has been taken away from me.
Instead of being the impartial pursuit of the truth, has become the pursuit of profit.
We've all been hearing about the announcement that we have mapped the human genome, but what the public doesn't know is now there's a great race by genomic companies and biotech companies and life science companies to find the treasure in the map. The treasure are the individual genes that make up the blueprint of the human race. Every time they capture a gene and isolate it, these biotech companies claim it as intellectual property. The breast cancer gene, the cystic fibrosis gene, it goes on and on and on. If this goes unchallenged in the world community, within less than 10 years, a handful of global companies will own directly or through license the actual genes that make up the evolution of our species, and they're now beginning to patent the genomes of every other creature on this planet. In the age of biology, the politics is going to sort out between those who believe life first has intrinsic value, and therefore we should choose technologies and commercial venues that honor the intrinsic value, and then we're going to have people who believe, look, life is simply utility. It's commercial fare, and they will line up with the idea to let the marketplace be the ultimate arbiter of all of the age of biology.
The corporation is not a person, it doesn't think. People in it think. And for them, it is legitimate to create terminator technology so that farmers are not able to save their seeds. Seeds that will destroy themselves through a suicide gene. Seeds that are designed to only produce crop in one season. You really need to have a brutal mind. It's a war against evolution to even think in those terms. But quite clearly, profits are so much higher in their minds.
Everything in life is first a seed. Seed is where life also diversifies. So in India, we used to have 200,000 kinds of rice varieties. But genetic engineering has given us only 2 traits. The first is, how do you take a gene from a soil organism which produces a toxin, put it into the plant so that now the plant is its own pesticide factory. But a pesticide factory will kill the bees, and so bees are dying. It'll kill the soil organisms. It is killing animals, but it also kills humans, not directly with the toxin, but because these seeds are genetically modified in order to take a patent. Royalties mean high costs. High costs means farmers get into debt. There is no way a farmer can continue to pay this back. The farmer borrows for this, gets into debt, and we have seen a tragedy emerge in my country. In the last 10 years of their control over the seed supply in cotton in India, more than 250,000 Indian farmers have committed suicide. 95% of all cotton seed in India is today owned by one company, Monsanto. Just like the soya sold in Brazil, or in Argentina, or in America, all owned and controlled by one company, Monsanto. The more we look at seed and biodiversity, the more we realize that the level of intelligence in the seed itself and in the breeding that farmers have done by working with the seed has given us not just the highest level of biodiversity, but the highest level of quality of food, the highest level of nutrition.
አንድ አይነት ቢሆን ከዘራ ጠፋ ያው የጠፋ ነገር ቅድም የተረጎምኩት ሊሆን ይችላል
Farmers breed for resilience, and therefore they breed for cooperative arrangements. They don't breed one crop. They know they must have many crops because the climate changes. They know they must have many crops because nutritional needs are diverse.
The production of food in indigenous traditions for most of human history has been to focus on advancing biological diversity.
To put in a gene for herbicide resistance, you now have a monopoly on the chemical as well as on the seed that is married to the chemical.
They are chemical companies first, but they are seed companies second. That is their... If you can control the seed, you control the profit from growing food.
You create a monopoly when you're providing seeds which have been engineered to be resistant to the pesticides that are used on those seeds. The net effect of that is that we're seeing a vastly increased use of pesticides, which is one of the things that GM was supposed to be tackling.
What we need is more freedom for the ecological action, for the local production, more freedom for the small farmer, more freedom for the child in every society to get healthy food. That is the freedom that's being destroyed. I see a continuity between the Seattle protests, the World Social Forum, the Occupy movement, the movement of the Indignados, where people are realizing 2 things. The ecological issue is not an isolated issue. It is about the very foundations of our very existence and all our economies. And second, that the dominant model of the economy is now trying to take over all aspects of nature and commodify them. Our water, you privatize it. Life forms, turn them into genetic mines, patent it. Even the air, you trade in polluted air and make money. You make money first by causing pollution, and then you make money in trading in carbon and buying offsets and all kinds of gymnastics, which are basically nothing but lies. I think the movements know which way the future lies. Economies that respect nature, that generate sustainable livelihoods, that create sustainable societies with well-being for all, This does not mean plundering the earth. In fact, it's when you stop plundering the earth, you have economies that are socially sustainable, because then wealth is more equitably distributed. You have economies where money doesn't make money, but money is a social good used to provide needs of people and work for all.